Hey guys, what's up? It's iFlynn here, and welcome to this week's episode of Thoughts with Flynn. If you're new around here, Thoughts with Flynn is a weekly video that I do to answer questions that you guys send me. To send me questions and have a chance at having your question answered in one of these videos, you can leave a comment on this video, join my Discord, and type it in the Ask Flynn Anything channel, tweet at me, or send me a Discord or Twitter message. With all the formalities out of the way, let's move on with the video. Our first question of the day is from Nothing to See Here from the last episode's comment section, asking, I like endless missions but dislike frame metas. How would you reduce or stop frame metas in an endless/void key scenario? This question stood out to me simply because for the longest time before Warframe started to get way more casual, I would do nothing but endurance runs every single day, so I was and still am familiar with all the frame metas that you need to put into practice to do long runs. Now, no matter what DE do, there's always going to be a meta for every single piece of content in Warframe, so it's more or less impossible to completely abolish the idea of a meta altogether, but there definitely is a way to reduce how meta the game feels through the design of the Warframes. One of my favorite examples to use when talking about this subject in particular is the comparison between Loki and Octavia. Both of them are frames that can go invisible for a pretty long time and have some pretty damn good crowd control. For me, the meta in a Void Defense mission, if I was doing an endurance run, would be Saren, Frost, Trinity, and Loki. Saren for the widespread scaling damage and viral procs, Frost for his defensive capabilities, Trinity for the unlimited energy, scaling damage on Energy Vampire and instant health regen on Blessing, then finally Loki for his crowd control and invisibility. Loki is important in this team because of his irradiating disarm augment that is available for his fourth ability, Radial Disarm. Pair this with the low duration, high power strength Trinity who is spamming Energy Vampire, the Loki will be able to spam his 4, crowd controlling every enemy caught within its 50-meter radius. He also has his invisibility, which he can use ahead of time to go and pop nullifier bubbles with a high fire rate weapon so that they don't disrupt the rest of the team's abilities. When you take Octavia's kit into consideration and compare her to Loki, you can start to understand why she might be considered to replace Loki in this type of setup. She has that invisibility and her own form of crowd control, as well as a bunch of other buffs and scaling damage. At that point, it's down to you and your team to figure out what is going to work better in your setup. That Octavia with the buffs, damage, invisibility, and slightly worse crowd control, or the Loki with the invis and the better crowd control without the buffs and scaling damage. These two frames are essentially able to compete for the spot in this meta setup, and I think that is good frame design. Unfortunately, DEs went down the route of making Warframes who are fun to play in their own right, but don't really compete with the rest of the roster. I feel like Hildryn is a great example of this. She's a fun frame, no doubt, but whenever it comes to being competitively viable with any other frame in an endurance run, she stands literally no chance. This question really just comes back to the state of the game and the direction that it's heading in. Endurance runs have been pointless to do for a while now, so DE haven't had the focus on making frames that are able to compete with other frames, and instead choose to focus on the fun element of these new frames. Some recent releases are kinda competitive with other frame metas, however, it's never for that endurance run meta like we were talking about. It's more so for like a quality of life, like Wisp can make the team go even faster with her haste mode, so if you pair that with Vault speed, now you can do a capture, rescue, spy mission, etc. just a tiny bit faster by pairing Vault and Wisp rather than everyone having to bring the likes of Vault or Neja every single time. There's pretty much a meta for everything in Warframe when you sit down and think about it. Different frames are going to be better or worse at different things. That's a weakness, but also a strength for this game. Everyone wants to play their favorite frame and all of the content that's available, and that's totally understandable because you put the work and effort into making your frame look badass and then be powerful as hell alongside that, but it stops DE from making more challenging content because you refuse to play a different frame, for example. Sometimes forcing the player to change their playstyle is not necessarily a bad thing. Lots of games require the player to sit, think, and strategize about what they're doing wrong that's stopping their progression and how they can change things up. That's what makes games mentally stimulating and interesting opposed to what we have now, which is the boring, bite-sized Warframe where you can pretty much do everything in the game with pretty much any frame. But even then, DE have created content like Eidolons or the spider fights, for example, that require you to change your playstyle up a bit. I myself enjoy this type of content, but I also acknowledge not everyone does, and a very low percentage of the player base plays this type of content, so DE may not be willing to continue developing tougher game modes. It's a very interesting topic to talk about, and I hope to make a video dedicated to the overall game design of Warframe in the future, but for now that's a rabbit hole that I don't want to jump into, at least in this video. Definitely let me know what you guys think of frame metas in Warframe in the comment section below. Moving on to our next question from Wookiees Can't Fly from the last episode's comment section. He asked a question that actually goes really well with the last one. People talk about attempting to lessen or get rid of frame metas in games like Warframe. Do you feel DE should instead do the exact opposite and enforce certain metas for certain content in order to give players milestones of power that are more tangible than MR? An example would be amps for Eidolon hunts. So we kind of covered this briefly in the previous question, but yeah, I do believe that DE should implement some kind of push for power or tangible milestones like you mentioned, simply because if that was not around whenever I first started playing Warframe, I would never have stuck with it. The idea of putting in effort to get to a certain point in the game is mentally stimulating to me. It's the entire reason that I invested the hours that I did to begin with. I honestly can't imagine how new players of this game feel whenever they put in all the effort to farm up all of this fancy gear, only to find out that there is almost no reason to use any of the equipment that they sunk hours into getting besides the amps like you mentioned. It's a difficult issue to tackle because I also acknowledge that you're technically gating off content. That's not an argument that I would personally make because I believe it's stupid to say that something you unlock in a game to beat a boss after beating a certain level is time gating, but there are the snowflakes out there who would make that argument. So again, it wraps back around to who are DE's target audience really? Who exactly are they trying to appeal to? Are they trying to appeal to the people that just want to jump in and casually grind the mission playing as a character with superpowers, or the people who actually want to play a game and progress? Implementing a goal for your players to get to, I think, is something that DE need to take a look at going into 2020 or 2021. You can make the argument that there are stages, like your first goal is to get a Warframe weapon, secondary weapon, melee weapon, etc. that you think are good and you want to play with, but after that, what is the second goal? You can't say that amps are a goal because the player literally doesn't know about it until they get their first one, implying they're not looking up guides or videos about the game. You can call the focus grind the goal, but even then there are only a few skills in the focus skill trees that are a must, and the same thing applies with the player not knowing that it exists until they get there. You can call actually creating a good amp a goal once you get to that stage, and now you could also make the argument that building a railjack is a goal, but as someone who's experienced railjack, I wouldn't recommend it personally. These pushes for power that we're asking for have to be apparent to the player in some way. There are lots of ways that you can make these things apparent through the likes of storytelling or gameplay, but that takes a lot of work to implement. I would say think about games like Pokemon or even Ratchet and Clank. All of these games let the player know through their environments and storytelling that there is gear that they can get later on that's going to allow them to access secret areas in the environments that they're already in. Warframe wasn't developed with that in mind, at least in my opinion. At the beginning of the game, you have your rose-tinted glasses on and you're tunnel visioning getting the cool frames and weapons that you want, but once you get there, you're left with no purpose. You figured out that the game doesn't really go anywhere after that fact, but you've already invested all the time and potentially money. There has to be a reason to use the things that the players deem worthy of getting through hours invested in gameplay. Whenever the majority of your player base sees no reason to kill Eidolons or invest into Focus, Arcwing, or even Railjack, players are going to get bored and then they're going to leave. So yeah, I do feel like DE should make more challenging, interesting, engaging content that forces the player to think a little bit differently about all of the tools that are available to them in the game and give them proper appeal to the majority of the player base. The problem is making said items or systems apparent to the player whenever they start playing. How would you go about making the systems and tools that are available to us in Warframe more worthwhile to the average player? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Moving on to question number 3 from Zan in the iFlynn Anything channel in my Discord. He asked, why is Warframe getting boring? This is a pretty subjective question, as someone watching might be having a blast with Warframe right now because they're a new player, but I feel like it's because that the DE's target audience is more gauged towards the casual player. Warframe is as close to a mobile game that you're going to get on the PC. What I mean by that is the game is designed via the hook, habit, hobby method of game design. So Warframe is going to hook you in by being a super flashy cool game with cool movement, combat, modding, etc. It then turns into a habit for you, as you have to come back to the game to farm resources and claim the weapons that you started crafting the day before. And then after that, like, you've invested so much time and potentially money into the game, it becomes a hobby. So then investing even more money into the game becomes more justifiable because all the time and money has already been invested prior. The game is becoming more and more boring to people because DE are trying to cast as wide of a net as possible to appeal to as many people as possible, to also get them hooked on the game so then they can make it a habit, and then hobby so then they can spend money netting DE a profit. A lot of the content that is being released lately probably just doesn't appeal to you either because it's too easy and accessible, or it's just content that you dislike. For example, I'm not too thrilled about space combat in video games, meaning I really dislike Railjack. The only type of space combat that I find remotely enjoyable in games is from the likes of Ratchet and Clank or Kingdom Hearts gummy missions. They are semi-fast paced, lots of explosions, gunfire, ship and boss battles. Railjack is like the furthest thing from any of that. If you're finding the game boring, literally just stop playing it for a while. I totally understand that it's a little hard to justify walking away from the game because you've maybe invested hours or even money into it, but the thing is, at the end of the day, it's just pixels on the screen, and there is a lot more to life, especially if you're younger, that you could be doing. Hell, even I walked away from the game while it's like literally my job to cover content for it. Taking that initial step away from the game helps change your mindset about it so much. Try not to get emotionally invested into the amount of time and money that you spent in the game, and think more analytically about it. If you're not enjoying your time, stop wasting it. Go do something you enjoy. The less time and money that you spend on the game, the more pressure that's put on DE to improve it, so it's a win-win for everyone. Is Warframe getting boring to you? Let me know how you feel about the game right now in the comment section below. Nuyu from the iFlynn Anything channel in my Discord asks, what do you think about solo play in Warframe? I think as time has went on, it's become easier and easier to solo literally all of the content in Warframe. I feel like this is an advantage but also a disadvantage for Warframe, as it's primarily marketed as a co-op shooter. Being able to solo content in a game is something that a lot of players want, myself included, but at the moment, the fact that we are able to solo most things in the game is detrimental to the co-op and, along the same vein, community aspect of the game. The only thing that I can think of that is worth co-oping in Warframe is Eidolons and Relics. Once you max your focus and get all the prime items that you want, there's literally no reason to co-op past that point unless you struggle in certain types of missions and need carried. DE need to reintroduce content that you practically need to co-op, otherwise people are going to get bored because of the lack of incentive to play with their friends. And I don't know about you guys, but whenever I play Warframe with my friends and clan back in the day, it was way more enjoyable back then than what it is now. Railjack sorta requires you to co-op, but number one, it's in a bad state. Number two, it doesn't really feel like it's Warframe, it's more so Warframe's take on space combat. And number three, you're able to get an upgrade later on down the line that allows you to repair your ship from the driver's seat, so the reason the co-op disappears after you invest some time. Let me know what you guys think about soloing and co-oping in Warframe down in the comment section below. Moving on to our next question, we have Velos from the iFlynn Anything channel in my Discord again, asking if I could remake Warframe in my own image, what would be the biggest / most important changes be and why? I really like this question because I studied game design back in college like 2 or 3 years ago. I've always had the dream of making my own game but have not took the appropriate steps to learn how to code or put together a working demo. Honestly, I would totally rework the combat of Warframe by introducing a lock-on mechanic so I could focus on making the shooting and melee feel way more meaty. Warframe at the beginning probably feels really engaging to newer players, but as you invest more and more hours into the game, that engagement factor goes way down. Warframe is one of the few games out there that gets easier as you play, and I honestly don't feel like that should be the case. The combat in Warframe is just inherently flawed. I reworked the entire thing, not just by changing how armor works or shields or anything like that, quite literally changing how enemies react to you, how they stagger when you hit them with melee or they get shot, how they retaliate, how abilities work, etc. Literally everything about the combat in Warframe makes the game so boring during late game that I think DE should just make a new game that's like Warframe, but with a better combat system, and it would be way more successful and plan to get the atmosphere, narrative, and game mechanics right. I could go on way more about this topic, but I don't want to put all of my ideas out there. On top of that, I feel like this video is going to be way too long if I keep going, but let me know what you would change about Warframe if you had the chance in the comment section below. Moving on to our final question of the day from Medley in the iFlynn Anything channel of my Discord. He asks, do you think there should be exclusive cosmetic rewards, like for example, the Wolf of Saturn 6 cosmetics that were reintroduced in Nightwave Intermission 2? Here's the thing. I hate time limited events. I think it's a waste of development time, and the fear of missing out or FOMO practice is a predatory business practice that just needs to be buried. The time that it takes to make time limited events and cosmetics could have been used to make something permanent, so that way, instead of relying on the shitty business practice of, oh hey, here's this cool thing that you can only get for a limited time, they could, actually make good content and earn your dollar that way. That's just my opinion, but it really pisses me off whenever some dickhead is like, hey, look at my time limited exclusive item, it's so much better than your stuff because it's time limited. It's such a boring and honestly petty thing to buy into. I think it's pathetic whenever people value time limited items so highly, like Excalibur Prime for example. Like, who really cares? It's Excalibur with a few extra stats. I get why people are pissed about it, but at the end of the day, I don't really have any sympathy because it's just a stupid thing to buy into in the first place. FOMO should just be buried and people should stop buying into the FOMO practice. That way, companies are just going to stop trying it. Let me know what you guys think of FOMO practices in Warframe in the comment section below. With all that being said, that concludes this episode of Thoughts with Flynn. If you liked it, hit like. If you disliked it, hit dislike. Remember, if you want to have a chance at having your question answered, leave it as a comment below. Leave it in the iFlynn Anything channel in my Discord. Tweet it at me or send me it in a Discord or Twitter message. But yeah, guys, subscribe for more Warframe content, and I'll see you guys in the next episode.